slightly disabled mother moved from the retirement croft house in the Isle of Lewis to the nearby town of Stornoway. Now well into her 70s, she had acquired a cottage by the harbour, thinking that city life would make it easier to cope with the wild winter weather. Tuesday, 11th January 2005, was a tempestuous day, even in Govan, the shipbuilding area of Glasgow where I presently live with Veren, my wife. But further out west in the Outer Hebrides, a storm of unprecedented proportions had come in from the Atlantic. Late that evening, my mother telephoned. She was coping, but her voice sounded wraith-like and terrified. Wind speeds are measured on the Beaufort scale. Francis Beaufort was an Irish admiral who had first gone to sea in 1787. His original scale went up to hurricane force 12. Each gradation related to sailing conditions. Thus, a force 12 with sustained wind velocities of between 73 and 83 miles an hour were those to which she could show no canvas, and which over dry land might cause considerable and widespread damage to structures. On that January night in 2005, winds of 120 miles an hour, 200 kilometres an hour, were recorded near Stornoway. There was also very high tide, and so combined with the storm surge of water piled up by the tempest, Stornoway's lower-lying streets became inundated by the sea. As I metaphorically held my mother's hand over the phone, she described how waves were bursting over the defensive wall across the road. Shovel loads of stones hailed against her bulging windows. She feared what might happen if the glass gave way. Salty rivulets percolated in around the windowsills and trickled down through the carpets. The whole street was impassably awash. Anybody venturing out would be at peril not just from the deluge, but also from roofing slates flying around like guillotine-edged banshees. "I'm exhausted," she told me. "My strength is almost gone. I've been up and down the stairs for the past 2 hours, mopping up as fast as it comes in. The emergency services sandbagged my front door, but they can hardly cope and say there's nothing else they can do." The crisis subsided as the tide receded, but that night's storm cost the islands millions of pounds in damages. I visited straight afterwards, and 3 boats were wrecked outside my mother's house, cast up on the rocks almost to the road. In our village of Lowerbost, close friends from school days were dealing with roofs ripped off their weaving sheds and blacksmithing houses. On the causeway joining South Hughes to Benbecula, a family of 5 in 2 cars, thought to have been escaping from rising floodwaters inside their low-lying home, were swept away to death. It was the worst natural disaster and the most terrible storm within the island's living memory. Scotland's top politicians at the time immediately promised to repair not just the infrastructure damage, but also to repair the confidence and morale of the local community. 3 years later, little has been done. The causeways remain dangerous and the community feels passed by. I couldn't help thinking that if this was the response to a small place at a time of high national prosperity, what would it be like if extreme weather events, as they're called by the meteorologists, get much more common?